Previously on Proko, Skelly sees Skella. It's love at first sight. He tries to seduce her with questionable pickup lines. She's not impressed. He gives her a flower. They hug. Skelly gets pregnant. Skella pulls a rib. They sword fight. Stan has bones too. This week there's drama in the Proko house. The new episode starts now.
Hello, my name is Stan Prokopenko. You're watching Proko. We've already studied the spine, pelvis, and rib cage. This lesson on the shoulder girdle will complete the bones of the torso. Pretty soon, we'll be moving on to muscles. Simple structure of the clavicle. Let's begin with the clavicle, because that's where the shoulder begins. A clavicle, in its least foreshortened position, is about 1 cranial unit, more or less, which is about the same length of the sternum, more or less. That's the advantage of having them near each other in the front. They're convenient to compare. But unless we're looking at the chest from the front, one of these is likely to be foreshortened. So we need to think of the clavicles as foreshortenable sticks.
Foreshortenable sticks?
What? No, Skelly, they are foreshortenable, meaning they can be foreshortened. But a clavicle is not a straight stick. It has 3 parts, and they are offset like this. In fact, when you put them together, they make the shape of a Cupid's bow. If love is not your thing, the clavicles also look like a pair of bicycle handlebars. And since they wrap around the base of the neck like the collar of a shirt, we call them collarbones. That's the first bone of the shoulder girdle, the clavicle. Simple structure of the scapula. Now let's move on to the dominant bone of the shoulder girdle, the scapula. The scapula is also known as the shoulder blade. We can simplify it as a triangle that's about a cranial unit high and about a cranial unit wide. And when the scapulae are in the neutral anatomical position, they are about a cranial unit apart, more or less. Here's a comparison that may help. The scapula is about the size of a cupped hand, which conveniently matches its concavity to the convexity of the rib cage. The scapula is all one bone, but for artists, it has 2 distinct sections. The body of the blade is here, mostly deep below the surface, except this medial ridge. The spine of the scapula is almost a bone of its own. It sticks out like a trowel handle that you can tap along the surface.
Great.
That's the spine of the scapula, subcutaneous and super important. Now, when we combine the scapula and clavicle, they sit on the ribcage like shoulder pads. The ribcage is thinnest at the top end, but with the shoulders, the thorax is widest at the top. The shoulder girdle is usually bigger in men than women, though it might not give any advantage in a fight. Anatomical details of the clavicle. Where do you think the arm begins? The arm begins at the pit of the neck. This is the only bone-to-bone connection of the arm to the trunk. The rest of the shoulder girdle never touches the rib cage. A network of muscles lies between them and secures them together. The pit of the neck is simple, but it has some pitfalls. Sorry. You may know that the sternomastoid tendons make a V shape in there, but only when they're tensed. And they're not always tensed. Watch for a box-shaped pocket. Don't place them too close together. Clavicles don't touch each other. They attach at the corners of the manubrium, spread out a good 2-finger distance from the center. An eyeball could fit in there.
You don't have to take it so literally.
Ligaments strap the clavicles to the sternum. They allow it to rotate on its ellipsoid joint and smooth out the bumpiness. So this area is usually smooth. Clavicles are subcutaneous all the way across. They anchor muscles from the neck and chest and serve as very important landmark lines. Anatomical details of the scapula. When we get to the end of the clavicle, we reach the acromion process. It seems like an extension of the clavicle, but it's actually an extension of the scapula, the farthest reach of the spine of the scapula. The acromion process is a flat, rectangular platform that steps down from the clavicle. From a top view, we can see the boxiness of the acromion process as the deltoid muscle wraps around it to attach to the front plane, side plane, and back plane. If you remember from the figure drawing course, we used this landmark to identify the top plane of the robobean. Let's look at the spine of the scapula in more detail. The spine on a human scapula twists from back to top. This means the spine of the scapula is a complex plane, like a ribbon on a cylinder. This may be hard to draw, but it's valuable. That rolling plane affects the surface, and it helps an artist know how the light changes as it twists. The glenoid cavity is the socket that holds the humerus. It has a shallow socket, not good for supporting weight, but great for mobility. The head of the humerus is a ball that fits into that socket, just below the acromion process. And since that socket is shallow, we have a network of ligaments called the rotator cuff that secure the ball of the humerus to the glenoid cavity. Works. Now here's the super important thing about the scapula. The blade, primarily this medial border, and the spine of the scapula make the primary landmark lines. They make a fixed angle more than 90 degrees, and when the scapula moves, that angle stays fixed. So how the heck do we find these lines on a model? Where is the scapula on this crazy mess of bumps? A lot of the scapula is covered with a mesh of muscles, but these lines will always be visible. In some poses, especially on muscular or heavy people, we'll see them as indentations. The trapezius attaches along the spine of the scapula. Rhomboids attach along the side. A group of scapular muscles sit on the inside of the blade, and the deltoid attaches along the bottom of the spine. In other poses, and especially on very lean people, the bones project outward, since the volume of the muscles is thin and stretched. Motion. Before we move on to motion, let's ask why we even need a shoulder. Why do we even need a shoulder? Well, obviously to move our arms, to place our hands where they should be. Or shouldn't be.
Hey, Dad! Whoa! Uh-oh.
An arm stuck to a ribcage couldn't do much beyond flopping around. A scapula allows movement because it has a ball and socket joint. If you're one of those weirdos that likes to scare your friends by popping your shoulder blade out, then you are an experienced anterior tilter. Please, just stop that. It's scary. Oh no, we're out of time. Well, to learn about the impressive motions of the scapula, head on over to proko.com/anatomy. In the premium anatomy course, each lesson has extended videos, more drawing examples, and 3D models that you could rotate and draw from any angle. Really, check it out. I'm very proud of the premium course. It's at proko.com/anatomy. The assignment. First, draw the rib cage. Then draw the shoulder girdle on top of the rib cage. Draw around to the other side, ghosting it as it goes around. Look for angles and landmarks, and draw them as three-dimensional forms. We'll need to master this before we include muscles. Think about it. The positions of the bones determine the shape of the muscles. When we can draw the clavicle and scapula as forms, we have the underlying structure that shapes the shoulders. If you like this video, don't be all selfish. Share it with your friends. And if you want to be updated about new videos, click this button or go to proko.com/subscribe. That's it. Thanks for watching. If you're posting your drawings on social networks, use the hashtag Proko, or consider posting them in one of the Proko Facebook groups. You can find them on proko.com/groups. Hey, have you seen my new app, Skelly, the posable anatomy model for artists? Go to proko.com/Skelly app or click this button to get it on iOS or Android. In the premium anatomy...
Okay. Whoa. Get it. What? Soluble sticks?
What the f***, Skelly? 4 shortenable sticks? No wonder Skella doesn't like you.